How many times do I have to say this? I am not a Viking. Hi guys, what's up? My name is David and welcome back to my channel. I have been on here for 3 years now. It's 2025, I started in 2022, and over the course of the activity on my channel, I have gotten so many comments along the lines of, "You're not a Viking," or like, "You're not a real Viking," or whatever. And I think I've said this before because for me this is obvious. Of course, no one in the 21st century is a Viking. And yet, some people are somehow led to believe that they are one, or that I think I am one, and I just want to talk about this because it's funny but also irritating that people say, "Oh, you're not a real Viking." Well, I have never claimed to be. So while I understand that someone might read the name of my channel, which is The Queer Viking Bro, and assume that I am calling myself a Viking, and this is actually absolutely not the case. So if you want a definition of what a Viking is, well, there are multiple definitions, but generally it is someone from the Viking Age, which was from around the 8th to around the 11th century, and it generally describes someone who went overseas from Scandinavia to any other country in that time period. So it generally describes a sort of job or activity rather than an ethnic group or something. However, there are some people who use the term Viking for every Scandinavian from this time period, even those who did not travel abroad, which I personally find problematic, and I would call people maybe Viking Age Scandinavians or late Iron Age Scandinavians, but even then, Scandinavia is a modern term. But one thing I can say for sure is that this term applies to the people from that specific time period, and not before and not after. So by definition, it is simply impossible to be a Viking right now. And returning to my username, I'm not calling myself a Viking. I'm calling myself a Viking Bro, which is something very different. I have made a video explaining why I chose this username, so feel free to watch that. But basically, a Viking Bro is someone who identifies as a Viking or identifies with Viking Age culture in a way that sort of like justifies toxic masculinity. And generally the term Viking Bro is not used by people themselves, but is used kind of derogatory by other people who say, "Look at this person with no knowledge of the actual Viking Age who thinks he's something special." So I decided to use that term in combination with queer because I am interested in the Viking Age, and I am also queer, and I'm also a student of Scandinavian studies. So I'm kind of using this term as a joke. Of course, I'm not a Viking Pro because I have knowledge of the Viking Age, but it's just a funny term that I like to use for myself in a sarcastic way. But I guess this doesn't reach some people, and they think I'm calling myself a Viking, which I am not. And here's the fun part. No one else is either. I recently got a comment saying like, "You're not a Viking, I am." Well, no. It's usually also people who are not even from Scandinavia, but are generally living in the United States and have some percentage of Scandinavian DNA, which makes them think that they are descendants of Vikings, which is not necessarily always untrue. I'm sure there are some people living in America with Scandinavian heritage who actually come from people who did go abroad in the Viking Age, but this is practically impossible to determine. Only if you do like a DNA test and it is a match with a DNA test done on Scandinavian bones found outside of Scandinavia, which would suggest a person in the Viking Age traveling abroad and dying there. Only then would you have Viking heritage. But even then, that doesn't make you a Viking because, again, a Viking is someone from that time period and not from now. And on the other hand, you know, as a queer person, I do understand the want to use a label which some people say, "Oh no, this is not the label you should use." So I'm not saying you cannot and should not identify as a Viking because I don't want to dictate someone else's need for expressing their identity. I'm just saying that in academia, the term Viking is reserved for this specific time period and not for modern people. So sure, go ahead and call yourself a modern Viking, or call yourself a Viking enthusiast, or like a Viking reenactor. That is all perfectly normal to do, but calling yourself a Viking, especially in the context of saying you are not, but I am, is just weird and problematic. So, again, no matter how much you think you have in common with the Viking Age, either through living in Scandinavia or having Scandinavian heritage, you are not, and you never will be, a Viking. And I want to make it perfectly clear that this is not in any way, shape, or form what I am trying to say about myself. I am Polish. I'm like 73% Slavic. I don't have any Scandinavian heritage, and I'm not claiming to have any Scandinavian heritage. I am just personally and academically interested in the Viking Age, and I sometimes dress up in historical clothing. I'm literally currently wearing a Viking cloak. But wearing Viking Age clothes does not make me a Viking. Being interested in the Viking Age does not make me a Viking. It makes me someone interested in the Viking Age. And, you know, I'm sure there are going to be people again who say like, oh, you're whatever, this and this and this and this, woke left, queer, or some kind of slur, not Scandinavian, so has nothing to say. I know all the arguments that are used against someone who says you're not a Viking, but you are really not. And I'm sorry if this hurts someone's feelings, but I honestly do not care. I would like to be considerate and explain to people what a Viking actually is, but I honestly do not believe that someone who makes these claims is actually willing to listen to reason and change, which is okay. I'm not here to change people. I'm just here telling my side of the story and hopefully shining a light on some strange people on the internet, because there's a lot of people claiming to be Viking, claiming to be Norse, claiming to be descendants from not even historical figures. And you know, if that makes you happy, sure, live your life. That's not, I honestly do not care. Just remember, you're not a Viking. I'm not a Viking. We're all not Vikings. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I hope you enjoyed this video, the first video of 2025. If you have any further questions, let me know down below. Check out my other videos if you want to. I am trying to get monetized, so please watch more of my videos if you have the time and if you enjoy my content. And yeah, I will see you next time. Bye bye.